The views and opinions of the Nissan Nation podcast are simply that. They are views and opinions of its guests or hosts. They do not reflect Nissan corporate or otherwise. Now, a DRB and KGB media presentation, the Nissan Nation podcast. Hit it, Kelly.
Recorded live, coast to coast, it's a Nissan Nation podcast. From camping, racing, and all points in between. The NNP is your Nissan Nation podcast. Now start your engines and welcome in your hosts, David, Danny, and Holden.
What is going on, Nissan Nation? From all things Nissan here in Middle Tennessee to, I guess we are a tri podcast area now. We got the ATL in the house and the, what are you, Upper Los Angeles, Danny? I don't know what they call you, man.
Southern California.
Yeah.
SoCal
Danny over there, and we got the ATL Holden over there. What's up, buddy?
Oh, yeah. What's up, man?
We big news, man. We are bringing Holden into the fold of the podcast. He is a co-host. He's somewhere in between Daniel Spangler's cats and I don't know, Danny and me somewhere in there.
Holden is part of the new trifecta of Nissan.
Yes.
Of the NMP.
Oh, we're laying the plan down of like sales figures. You want sales figures now, guys? We've got the inside track to sales figures.
If you want sales figures, I get you sales figures. We will pump those numbers up.
That's right. We will.
Holden's just here to pump everybody.
The sales figures will now be brought to you by Regal Nissan. If you need sales figures sold to you, we can do that. So yeah, big news, man. We had decided to bring Holden in a little bit. As Danny says, I can cover events, I guess, and Danny knows that racing, and we needed somebody that actually knows Nissan. So we brought Holden in, man.
We had to bring a little bit of a official Nissan in the mix so as to be slightly more legitimate skis.
It's a little white collar flavor that I bring to the table.
A little normalcy between me and the Danny and Dave show.
So now we have somebody to bounce our jokes off of, Danny.
I really think that you guys brought him in case one of us gets a little too. That way somebody can carry the show.
That's right. There'll be a Christmas release of a show we tried to do once, and it's full of cat fights and Danny's ramblings, and it was quite interesting.
Let's be honest, Dave. It's full of love. Lots of love.
A lot of love.
There is lots of love.
I love you guys.
Oh man, so what's up, guys? Danny, what's up in your world, man? I know you've been on the Instagrams this week.
Yeah, I got my toes in a bunch of pots. I think that's the saying. I've got a lot of plates spinning. I'm doing a little brewery thing with a good buddy of mine. We're looking to possibly open up a small brewery out here in Southern California. My race truck is coming along. We should be picking up front shocks any day now. We were told like 2 weeks ago that they were done, but still waiting. Apparently there's some big stuff going down and we're still waiting.
Well, last I heard.
But the front, go ahead.
Is it Radflow that you're working with on those?
The front or King. We got a little sponsorship through a company called NV Motorsports, and he took care of us. He gets a really good deal through King. So we were able to get all the front shocks from King for a killer price. Yeah, we got the front spindles and A-arms and everything. Spindles are all laser cut. A-arms are all mocked up. Now it's just a matter of getting the shocks in and getting all the laser cut stuff back so we can start getting that all welded up and put in. So, but
you kind of have an idea of your travel now on the front, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be cycling 17.5 inches in the front, which is pretty cool. That's a lot of good travel.
What was the Team Xterra Racing? Is this similar to their setup or?
He was running a class 7 or 7S, I can't remember, before he went into the 7100 class for best in the desert. So what that earlier class that he was running in, you had to have like stock modified suspension. So he could only get, I want to say, about 10 inches of travel out of his front suspension. I mean, it was heavily modified, but he had to fully rebuild the front upper control arms, basically use the upper control arms that he had that came stock of the truck and reinforce and rebuild them. But he had to maintain the front stock geometry, basically. So he could not cycle as much as what I can because of the extended arms. The arms that I have on there are probably going to put the hubs about 5 inches wider than stock. I think we haven't measured it, but I think that's the approximate number.
So, but y'all be in the same class though, right? I mean, it's just.
Yeah. And he could widen his out. He has a pretty tried and true truck as far as suspension. The suspension's set up really nice. It's just, he's getting his rear end finished up. He did have some problems testing right before the mint. That's why he wasn't able to get into the mint. But he's talking about going to Best in the Desert because he basically broke his truck during testing right before the mint. So he had to go back and rebuild some suspension components that broke. So that's where he's at. Last time I heard.
Well, so what's you're still kind of on a time frame of sometime this summer being able to start testing with this a little bit, or?
Yeah, I'm hoping late summer. Brandon over at BTF texted me just the other day. I stay in pretty close contact with him. He's finishing up one other truck that he's had in line. He's crazy busy, and this is kind of the busy season for him. And he's done some work, but he hasn't been able to spend a good amount of time on the truck. So he's going to be basically opening up a brick of time for my truck as soon as he finishes up this other truck, which should be in a couple weeks. And that's when the laser cut stuff's coming in. Front shocks are coming in. Lots of pieces are in. It's just a matter of kind of getting them all done, putting them in the truck, and him getting a chop cut weld.
Right.
done.
So pretty much like your safety cage and all that is done, right? And now you're kind of moved on to suspension, or?
Yeah, the base cage is done. It still needs a lot of support bars and gussets and all that stuff, but the base frame is done. The rear suspension is hung. The shocks are in. The shock tabs are mounted. So the rear is 80% done as far as suspension. There's still some fine tuning with that, but the fuel cell stuff is the fuel cell's in. It's not wired or plumbed or anything like that, but still kind of working on the guts. It's just a matter of time. It's like a 2-man shop over there, so I think they got a little inundated, and he's trying to kind of dig his way out while still being crazy busy.
Well, so as far as like what would be once you get like this front stuff in, what's your next, like getting seats set up ready, or I mean, what's kind of the next path for you?
The suspension will be done, and then it's going to probably be either finish up the engine cage, which will tie into the main cab cage. That'll be bars that'll basically support the strut tower, allow for protection for the radiator and allow for mounting of fenders and stuff like that. And then it'll be basically we'll have to cut the roof off, weld the top of the cage in, and then start laying down all the structural support in the cage in the cab. And then your, seats mounted, dash in, stuff like that.
So they literally have to cut the roof off of this thing? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, in order to fully weld the top of the cage, because the cage goes in and gets welded all along the bottom, and then you chop the roof off, pull that off, you weld the whole cage in, sit the roof back on, and tack it all back together and do your thing.
Man, it sounds every time I think, oh, Danny's getting close, it's like, no, there's still a mile of a list to go on this thing.
Yeah, and in truth, some of the stuff it just takes time at the fabricator. And fabrication, especially down here in Southern California on desert style trucks, is everybody's building them, and that's if you find someone that's really good at it, and that's his full-time gig. A lot of people want him to do work, and he turns out a lot of product, and he does amazing work. It's just a matter of trying to get it done.
Well, so as far as I'm assuming, once you bring the truck home, there'll be a little like there's going to be stuff that you're going to have to start fabbing up a little bit, or just things that you've got to kind of.
I have a whole list, and I just started a list on my whiteboard. And I'm actually looking at it right now, and it's just super simple, easy stuff. But it's setting up limit straps, window nets, fuel cell routing. Dash gauges, fuel pump wiring. The list goes on and on and on. I can't think of it all right now, but there's, new. I want to put new hoses. I want to kind of go through the engine a little bit and get that going strong. I got new hoses coming from Off-Road Gorilla pretty soon. We did get a full sponsorship on wheels and tires, which is really cool. We're going with some KMC beadlock wheels, which is awesome. They hooked us up big time at Wheel Pros hooked us up with those. And then our local tire distributor here, Simi Valley Tire Pros, is hooking us up with some 35-inch Generals to go on those. And those are 17-inch wheels that I'm going with.
And then don't forget, Regal Nissan's hooking you up with some front hubs.
Yeah, that's going to be sweet. As soon as we get those laser cut spindles, Regal Nissan's hooking up some sponsorship, supply some new hubs, so I'm not driving on some old rusty Buster hubs. So that's pretty awesome. I was pretty appreciative of that.
Well, do you already start looking at maybe looking at junkyards and stuff, just looking for stuff that you can start stockpiling for this truck?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have 2 steering racks on my shelf right now that I've accumulated. One I got from a guy that didn't need it, and another one is I don't remember where I accumulated that one from. It was a while back.
Danny's in SoCal just stealing people's for steering racks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll go through steering racks. It's you can't upgrade the steering in this class. You can kind of strengthen it and do some stuff, but there's not a lot of options when you're running a steering rack, and it's a little bit of a weak point. So there's a possibility of maybe blowing those out. Actually hooked up with Duncan Mills Parts Puller. Thanks for him. He got me a set of headlights. It's just accumulating parts that I know I'm going to need. I did that YouTube video for the Parker pumper, which is the air pump for the helmets. So, because that's you need fresh air through those helmets, else they'll fog up and you'll overheat, and it gets really hot out there in the summer. It's extra radiators for your and fans for your trans and oil and stuff like that, just because it's so hot out in the desert. You'll be racing around in 90-degree weather and 100-degree weather, and you're going all out half the time.
So what you're saying is you're not going to go factory radiator and all that?
No, I already have a Griffin full aluminum radiator in there, and all the trans coolers and all that stuff will probably be upgraded with auxiliary fans and whatnot.
Well, what about like batteries and stuff? Do you have to run dual batteries, stuff like that, for all the electronics? Because I know you still got communications. You're going to have to do radios in this truck, and
yeah, I'll probably be running dual fans. I don't know. I'll probably hit up Off-Road Gorilla for that. I know he's got a pretty cool dual fan setup. I may do that. Yeah, you'll run. I'll run dual batteries. I may upgrade the alternator. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. Might hit up Rugged Rocks to see about getting a high output alternator on there. But yeah, dual batteries, partially just for redundancy too, as well. Mm-hmm. You want to make, because you lose a battery for some reason and you're out. If you have 2, you got twice the possibilities of not failing, I guess. So it's one more reason to have 2 batteries.
Whoa, Holden! Don't let me steal all the questions for Danny in his truck, man. Because we're going to get to you in a minute. I got questions for you for what you've got going on.
I know I've kind of asked him in the past personally, but I mean, we can talk nuts and bolts and everything like that. But maybe some people want to know: is there a specific color scheme? Are we gonna what's the outside of this beast maybe going to look like? Give us a hint.
Well, I've had some renderings done by Luke Pankow and one of his buddies that does wraps. It's still kind of up in the air depending on all of who all comes in for sponsorships. But there's a hard push for basically red, black, and white, and which I know you probably a little keen on because those are kind of Regal colors, which is going to work out nicely. But the Tire Pros is my main sponsor, and those are their colors as well. I'd really like to be able to get the red color that my truck has as the red color, and then like I said, black and white. As far as how it's gonna be laid out on the truck, I'm not 100% sure yet. There's a kind of a cool splash pattern that Luke laid out on a rendering that I liked a little bit. Where it kind of comes up from front door and goes backwards.
Do that classic Nissan like Holden's got on their Regal truck, man. Do that with your tire guy on the side of it instead of saying Nissan, man.
I like that, but I see a lot of trucks with it now, kind of redoing it, and I don't, the Regal truck looks really good like that. But and there's a couple of the old school racers that have the red, white, and blue Nissan trucks, and I thought about doing that, and I don't know. I go back and forth. I kind of want something a little bit more flashy, to tell you the truth.
I want to know, can we do like a action suit on the hood, kind of like the gray come up and have a red tie down the middle, and just kind of have just a little slight nod to action suit where only inside people would understand it?
There's definitely going to be a nod to the action suit for sure. There's going to be a bunch of nods. I think I'm gonna reserve a whole panel for a bunch of secret BS Nissan stuff that nobody really gets. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be, hashtag 68 miles and the golden sleepover. And I've accumulated a lot of stickers, and I'm gonna dedicate an entire, whether it's a window or panel or whatever, to all the BS secret inside joke stickers.
So as you're passing them Ford Rangers or whatever you race against, man, they can go, "What the hell is this guy's deal, man? He's fast and he's confusing."
Golden sleepover.
He's getting on the mic. Hey, will you call those guys over Golden Sleepover and figure out what's going on? I just got passed by the Xterra.
So instead of
who's no lock Rod?
So instead of Grooters on the side of this truck, it's going to say Action Suit, right?
It's gonna say powered by Action Suit Groot.
I love it, man.
Powered by Power Rocks. I gotta make a mount for the Power Rock.
Yeah, dude, the rock's gotta be in there, man. No doubt,
yeah, buddy.
So Holden, man, since you're our new third man, what kind of, I know we've interviewed you in the past, man, but kind of lay out your deal, man. I know Regal's your deal, but what do you do? Give us the lowdown on Holden.
Well, the lowdown on me, I guess, I'm the assistant executive manager. So, essentially I just am kind of helping my pops run the day-to-day business. So kind of what I'll do is, focus in on different areas of the business, ways to improve, whether that's, focusing on parts, new car sales, used car sales, just kind of work through every department. Still learning, some from other departments and whatnot. So that's kind of where I am. I know a little bit about everything about the business. So what I can do is, while Dad might be focused on some bigger things, I can really drill into, lately I've been looking into our parts department and figuring out some new ways for our special orders to get contacted, just things like that. Sometimes some of those tasks that can be a little bit grinding, figure those out, and then come up with new processes and procedures to solve those solutions.
So that sounds like a nice hobby for you, but your real job is off-roading, right?
Yeah, and then out of that, obviously being in the dealership, we were able to start was able to start a Black Watch Customs, which is kind of my side project. We do custom work, lifts, bumpers, whatnot, to different trucks, Xterras, Titans. We do a little bit of Z stuff from time to time. So it's been really fun. Just this week did a hefty fab aluminum front bumper, a worn winch, rigid light bar on a customer who had been in the past to get just a 2-inch lift. And he just follows the Instagram page and just saw some of the stuff we were posting up. So decided to upgrade. So that's a really cool aspect of the business, is being able to be a dealer that's also offering aftermarket parts.
Right. And when 2 inches isn't enough, man, you come to Holden, they give you the full package over there. So yeah, man, I've seen that you guys are churning out some Frontiers here lately. And of course, when the last time I was in the dealership, you had, what is that Titan you had in there? It was like 6-inch lift or something on that thing. And, which I think kind of when I started following you a little bit, that seems like what caught my attention is you guys just started lifting vehicles and just, I was like, a dealer's lifting vehicles, man. And that was before Nissan was talking about doing their own lifts, y'all just seemed like y'all were kind of jumping in on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something I really just kind of came to my dad about. I was like, hey, why don't we just start doing some lifts and things like that? And the nice thing is he was real open about it and was like, sure. I mean, and I kind of was like, said that. And he's like, all right, well, you're in charge. You figure it out and you start a business and have at it. So, but yeah, it's been nice. I mean, obviously that's where I started learning a lot because I didn't really have any experience whatsoever doing it. So it was just,
you mean the
first couple weeks.
The Marine Corps didn't train you on car sales and stuff?
Yeah, you'd think so. I know people thought I was crazy when I was getting out of the Marines to go get in the car business. But yeah, so just started reading and just started making connections and started testing on my Xterra. I mean, I put all kinds of junk and crap on my truck along the way and have since upgraded. But that's when I found the Went event, and me and Dad went up there. And since then, I've met guys at Nistec, obviously Danny, and a bunch of other people that kind of pointed me in the right direction. So now I got all these contacts for where whenever I need parts. I mean, it's pretty simple just to be inside the community and getting parts from these guys. So it's been super beneficial for us.
Right. Well, that's awesome, man. So tell us about your Xterra a little bit. I know like I said, we've talked about it in the past, but for new listeners, kind of give us a lowdown on what you're running.
Yeah. So I got 2014 Pro 4X Xterra. Some of my bigger mods is I got the Radflow, or I guess sway away coilovers on the front with upper control arms. Have the Nistec Add-A-Leaf and variable ride height shackle on the rear. Insane Fab shock skids, full Hefty Fab skids underneath. The Hefty Fab front tube bumper. I got Heps door panels in all my doors, and I'm Nismo cold air intake, ARB locker in the front. One of the only guys I know who's had his Xterra tuned and is now running GTR injectors in it. Got the PMP light cage that I won at Went 2 years ago with the rigid R46 lights up in their little round lights because I like that look. And still running a Yakima rack, but eventually I got to switch over and get a Heps rack. I guess that's a pretty super brief description of it, but
right. Well, besides your that, man, I know you've got kind of a hell of a tow rig now too.
Yeah. So, also have the Titan XD with the Cummins. I was one of the first people to put on the Icon coilover lift. Had a local company here. They wanted to start building Titan bumpers, so I told them they could use my truck, so all I had to do was pay materials. So they built me a front and rear bumper, and then from there I had Heps. We measured out, and ends up the utility track system for the Titan is the same width as the Frontier, so I have his spare carrier in the back that he had powder coated red for me, so that's pretty cool touch, and just a high lift mount in the back as well. But and then a Hellwig rear sway bar. So yeah, a nice little tow rig. Last year when we towed it up to Went, definitely was a lot nicer. Being on the trails, knowing you could always tow it back if something happened.
Well, that explains the rock challenge then.
That does explain the rock challenge. There was no fear.
Well,
Holden,
go ahead, Danny.
I was gonna say, I know we did. Dave did the whole podcast back from Regal Nissan that one time, and then I guess it was the grand opening. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your buddy, that the guy that works as a mechanic over there that has a GTR that he's been racing and stuff like that. Any updates on that, and how's that going?
Yeah, I was just talking to him today because he had the car in the shop, kind of doing some normal maintenance and stuff. He's actually going to be having the engine refreshed. So I know he's working on getting that done. He's going to have Tom Lynch from Lynch Mob Racing is going to do the refresh for him. So that's something cool that I know currently he's working on, getting ready for the race season. I'm actually in talks with him right now. I mean, obviously he uses our lifts and uses tools, and we obviously sell him parts at cost, but we want to maybe do a little bit more as the dealership to kind of support him. So talking about maybe doing some trackside support, help cover his tuning possibly. So we'll kind of see how that goes, be a sponsor for him. So, because I know the race season's coming up, but he's real excited about getting that engine refreshed. I mean, Lynch Mob Racing, they're starting to get kind of a little bit bigger into the GTR scene. So he's pretty excited to be kind of teaming up with those guys a little bit and maybe possibly running some new stuff for them, testing some new things. So, yeah, I mean, we could always get him on the show whenever. He that's his baby. Anytime you buy something that was just a roller and build it from the ground up, it's really cool, crazy, cool story.
Yeah, he liked talking about it the night we sat down and chatted a little bit.
Yeah, I had a blast listening to him because we don't get too much GTR stuff on here, and and he's in that big level of really digging deep and starting to suck some serious power out of those GTRs, and I've seen so many YouTube videos and whatnot of those things just creaming on the tracks.
Well, speaking of
so it was cool to listen to that.
Speaking of GTRs, man, I don't know if you guys follow this or not. I'm sure there's 100 pages for it on Facebook, but there's a JDM kind of weird buy sell pages that you can follow, and I've been following them tracking GTR sales, and of course not the current R35 or whatever they call it. I've been tracking the 34, man, and I don't know if you guys have paid attention to these prices, but like a 33, you can get $14,000 to $18,000. The 34s are starting to, even though there's only a handful that I guess are street legal here in the States, $100,000 plus, man, on these cars. And there was some guy out of Florida, I'm sure he was a dealer, had like 6 or 7 of them he posted up the other day, man. It was like 120K, 130K, and I was like, Christ, man, there goes my dream of ever owning a 2002 GTR.
Yeah, they're just super collectors, super secret ways to get them and whatnot. But unless you have massive cash, and it's not like you could just like go out and finance something that for the most part.
Well, I'm sure Regal over there could figure that out, how to finance it.
Yeah, I wish we could. I mean, we have 2 Skylines that come, the older, I don't know what years they are. We very rarely see them, but every once in a while they'll come in for service. But other than that, we don't see very many of them in our market. But
I would think you would see more too over there in that area.
You would think. I mean, that's just, we don't see. I mean, I see them on the street, but as far as coming in for maintenance and things like that, I think a lot of those guys take them to more specialty shops than they do just a regular dealer. But that's one thing nice about having Eric. It's crazy because he's not a real talkative guy. He's a real quiet guy. But if you start talking about cars, he'll talk your ear off. But going out to these events and meeting these guys, he's really brought us in a lot of work as far as, talking to these GTR customers and things like that. So it's definitely a big help having him around. And I mean, time's getting closer for some of these 96 Skylines and stuff to start becoming legal. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens.
Yeah. What is it? 20,
because I know
20 years or 25 years on them?
I think it's 25.
Yeah.
I think. But I mean, there's still some out there that are in good shape. Because I know me being a Marine, I was stationed out in Okinawa, Japan. Me and a buddy of mine, when we were out there, we bought a 96 Skyline manual. And, I mean, it was in pretty good shape. And we just drove it around the barracks or not the barracks, but we drove it around base and went out in town in it and just had a fun time with it.
Yeah,
and now I look back, and now that I'm more aware, I'm like, dude, we didn't even know what we had. We just bought the cheapest thing we could find on the Facebook yard sale page.
Well, what's sad is when you see because there's a certain mileage in Japan after that, like inspections, I guess, a nightmare for these cars, and they start going to the crush yards, and you're like, you'll see GTRs stacked on each other, man, and you're like, it's so sad.
Yeah, if you want to make yourself sick, get on one of the Marine Facebook yard sale pages, like Okinawa yard sales, things like that. And guys sometimes just are rotating back to the States and just need to hurry up and get rid of this car. They're selling it for a couple grand, and you're like, if there was a way for these guys to get these cars to the States, they'd easily go for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and they're over there like, I need to get rid of this thing real quick.
Right.
My old lady's breaking up with me.
Well,
I'll sell it to you for $4,000.
Is it? I know you can import the cars as race cars, right? But you can't. Is it once you import it as a race car, you can never make it street legal, or what's the big holdup on that? Do you know?
I don't. I mean, I've heard the rumors and stories. The guys who tuned my Xterra, one of them apparently had one, and the feds came. He was one of the ones where the feds came and picked them up. And I've heard, yeah, you can import them in as race cars, but then, it doesn't have a VIN, or it does have a VIN, but the VIN's black marked. So I don't think anyone really knows what the rule actually is on them.
Come on, Trump. Come on, buddy. Stop building walls and bring us some GTRs, man. That was Political Nation. Oh, sorry. Back to the real nation. So Holden, like, as far as like the dealership, I know dealers really don't get any kind of better idea than what the average Joe does about when cars are coming out. But you've got two sports cars sitting in your dealership that need refreshed badly. The 370 and the GTR. The GTR, for their kind of their big heritage car now, man, it's looking old. Any idea on that stuff?
I don't. I've asked about the Z from time to time. I could say right now, with obviously Nissan's had a lot of turnover with the new physical year. So we've kind of been feeling that crunch with, it's kind of refiguring out who's in charge of what and the big reshuffle. But the people have asked and, talked to about, hey, what about this car? Everyone right now is praising and singing the psalms of the new Altima. Everyone, if you talk about anything else, all they want to talk about is new Altima. Yeah. So that's something big for them. And still they're talking Titan. And I've been told just wait till the new Frontier comes out, but I can't get any specs on it. So right now everyone's real focused on the new Altima. They really want people to be aware of that.
Can you get your inside connections over there? At least draw a stick figure of the Frontier. This is what it looks like.
Just have them draw a flat line and two tires in a correct dimensional size. That we can understand what they're looking at.
And if they did that and we post it, you know what's amazing? I noticed the other day I posted a picture of the Terra, the Chinese Terra, which is like the Xterra, and of course I found it from some Filipino site. It was amazing to me within like 15 to 20 minutes after I posted that on our Facebook page that all of a sudden you see like people, they don't even like give you credit anymore. They just like steal your picture and look what I found all of a sudden. So could you imagine a stick figure car, what would happen? And just like inside sources that says this is the next Frontier.
I think we should just do it. We should try and just start photoshopping stuff as much as we can.
Like poorly too.
Start fake news we'll just start fake news into the max.
Maybe
new Frontier just announced by Nissan.
Speaking of the Terra, one interesting fact before I forget it, is I was actually reading just the other day in Automotive News, one of the fancy newspapers we get for being a dealership and this, that, and the other. There's an interesting article talking about how with this new Altima, there's a lot of Chinese influence, and how it's essentially from what the article kind of talks about is they sat the Japanese and American and Chinese designers in a room together, since they're going to be open, obviously, the Chinese market. And pretty much the article kind of talks about, what you're going to start seeing is a lot more Chinese influence from Nissan and Nissan products in the future. One of the big things that they talked about was off-road and 4x4 trucks that are becoming very popular in China.
I was going to say, they seem to be, I know with like the Philippines and stuff, you always see those guys lifting trucks like nuts. But yeah, it has to start bleeding into that, because China, compared to the U.S., has a lot of similar territory, and those people now have, expendable monies they can throw around and want to travel, and I can see that definitely.
Yeah, so I just thought that was a very interesting article.
Plus they have no emissions, so you do what you.
I mean, essentially, it was talking what does the new Altima tell us about the future of Nissan, and that was one of the main things they said was, look at the Chinese market right now, and what you might be seeing is
whatever's driving the Chinese market might be coming over and start driving the American market, which would make sense.
Yeah, because their total sales numbers are just inches away from what American sales numbers are.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just read one part that I thought, and they were just talking about, the 3 different teams, and they kind of said the Chinese design team pressed for a flashier and more luxurious Altima with more chrome, larger headlights, and body cladding. The Japan team wanted a more mature, luxurious look, while the U.S. team pressed for a lighter, sportier design. So you can kind of see there's a little bit of everything mixed in that, but essentially what they're saying is the Chinese is becoming more important to Nissan, and we should expect bolder styling in the future and possibly whatever's driving that market to come over here. So maybe the Terra is not that far away.
Right. And of course, for us silly Americans, they call that what the Tinya over there, I believe, is what they call the Altima. But yeah, the current Altima is over there in that area now, so I can see it. Dan, I don't think we've really not got to talk to you about that Terra at all, man. And you're our off-road guy. What was your opinion of that thing?
I like the look of it. It's hard to say what kind of powertrain we'd see over here. I imagine it'd probably be the same thing as what a new Frontier would be. Whoever decides whatever the new Frontier powertrain. We've kind of killed that dog a couple times. I think, I've voiced it a million times. I think a small diesel would be so kick-ass in the U.S. with one of those, with some really cool, electronic 4x4 traction control stuff. Stuff that like you see on the Toyota, where it's, I don't know, it has that intelligent traction control and whatnot.
Over the weekend, the Toyota I saw with the traction control lost it, and its traction control ended up in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah, no, that was down here in SoCal that lost its rear end.
Yeah.
I don't have all the info. I've seen a couple things, and I've seen a couple haters talking about it. It did sound and look very much like a combination of some driver error and a lot of combination of failed recovery to the max. Failed installation of product, driver fail, and then some recovery fail. I think it was the kaleidoscope of failures.
That video was funny, man, because the two guys that are doing commentary on it, and and when you hear the guy go, "I told him that was going to happen. I told him," and they were just going to do what they were going to do, man.
I'd kind of heard where, because I was watching the video, I was like, why are all these guys standing around with the cameras out recording this while it's happening? And from what I've heard is the guy in the driving is an expert and knows everything, and kind of told all those guys to back off, and he knew what he was doing. So they all just said okay and pulled out their phones. So
you know what? I've been in that situation where there's a couple guys trying to lend a hand, or you're trying to talk it out and say, okay, listen, this is what I think. What do you think? And you talk it out and you find the best possible scenario. But then I've been in a situation where you start doing that, and then somebody else says, "Oh no, I know how to do this," or someone thinks they're in charge, or puts them, and you say, "You know what, dude, this isn't my truck."
Right.
If you wanna be the head of this pack and do it your way, then you get to reap the rewards.
Well, his
reward was
there was a lot of reward
gone off the back of his truck.
There was a lot of reward on that, man.
I think I've been up that trail, and it's a pretty hard trail, but it's not like super gnarly.
Yeah, well, I did what I couldn't understand, and we'll get back to the Nissan. I couldn't understand on this thing was the guy was holding the brakes down when they're trying to tug him, and I'm like, I don't. And then when you hear that first little crunch, I'm like, that's when you stop, man. You go, whoa, what's
shock and reevaluate and stuff like that. Yeah,
and then the spotters are like, no, just keep going, and you can see the axle shifting into the body, and they're like, nah, just keep going.
In truth, when that thing started rolling back and that axle shifted, I think he got crazy lucky. That thing didn't flip over and roll. And as bad as it was, I think it could have even been worse.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like when it started going, he's lucky it turned sideways and stuff. Else it would have flipped, I think.
Even tugging it with that looked like a metal winch line that they were essentially just tugging it with, not even winching. I mean, the fact that didn't maybe snap and
they had that paper towel over it in case it snapped. So
There's a green rag over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's gonna die. Yeah, it looked like a hot mess, and it looked like there was a lot of people standing back, like they just knew, they had front row seats at
a shit show, man.
At a shit show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
So
what jumped out to me. There was
would've-
like 10 guys with cameras, and I'm like, those guys are jerks. And then I end up hearing the guy
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't-
know it all. So
yeah,
I guess
definitely.
that's what you get.
Well,
Yeah.
that's that, and this is a show for another time, but that's that Overlander guy now, man, that just, I've seen that YouTube video. I know exactly how to handle this situation. And it's like, yep,
Yeah.
well, now you're going to pay for the price, man. So, but back
Yeah,
to the
it's
Terra,
unfortunate,
Dan.
But
So, I mean, I like it, man. I've liked it from day one. I thought it was a pretty classy looking truck, very Forerunner like. I could see it working
I fully
here.
agree. Yeah, I could see it selling really well over here. Tell you the truth, put it up against a Forerunner, maybe give it a slightly better price point, and give it most of the same features as as a Forerunner, and give it a Pro 4X version or something like that with some cool off road features.
But if Nissan were to bring it here, don't call it the Xterra. Call it a Patrol, man. I'm telling you, they would give them legitimacy in the off-road market by just calling it a Patrol. And I mean, it would have to have some
that would
legit.
be a great idea. Yeah.
It would have to have some legit features about it too. But I'm an Xterra guy through and through. But don't call that thing an Xterra, and just a fresh start.
I would be good with an Xterra.
I'm not saying I wouldn't, but really give it. I don't know,
The
man.
Xterra's made a killer name for itself, man, and it's got a pretty good following now. I mean, I feel like when they ended it, the Xterra had the second year of the Xterra had a long run, and right when they ended it, it started getting some really good momentum behind it.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Have you noticed?
Credit, you started seeing it in magazines. You start, a lot. It had been around long enough to where there was a lot of guys doing it. All the events we go to, we started building and building and building, and all of a sudden they killed it.
Well, have you noticed, like, now all of a sudden, now that it's dead, all of a sudden it's like some of the bigger builders are like, oh, I've got to start building a bumper for this thing. And you're like, where were you 15 years ago, man?
Yeah, exactly. Just when it, like I said, I walked through the store the other day and I saw Andrew from Rogue Overland. His truck is on the Tread cover page.
Yeah.
You see, some of the larger companies building some stuff for him. And,
Do you think,
and that, this is just right after it ended its,
do you think
long life.
sometimes that's Nissan pushing these magazines a little bit, going, let's gauge interest of what we killed and maybe see what, and I mean, it's very backdoor. What I'm saying is of just going, hey, let's push this just to see what happens.
I not for Tread. Tread's a pretty small magazine. I mean, it's not in the world of really big magazines. It's a fairly new magazine, and I think that just came from local guys here. I've
Right.
met the guy that ran Tread and Andrew and stuff like that. I don't know if Nissan's that. And Holden, maybe you can weigh in on this. I don't think Nissan's that involved, to tell you the truth, down in the nitty gritty.
I don't think they're that grassrootsy. Really, when it comes to models like that, what they're looking for is dealer input, and dealers kind of saying, "Hey, we need something like this. We want something like this." That's the biggest thing, because Nissan can come to market with different cars, but if dealers don't believe in it, then dealers aren't going to push it and sell it.
So do
You see that with certain dealers with Leaf.
You really do think that dealers have a lot? And why I ask this is because dealers are always seem like the last to know anything. But do you really think they have a lot of input on that?
They don't have input as far as what actually comes to market, but I do think Nissan does put into stock what dealers might want. I only say that because the head of Nissan trucks in Tokyo flew all the way out here to meet with our dealership and one other dealership in Noonan, Georgia, about Nissan trucks. So I think if dealer input wasn't that important, you wouldn't see that type of involvement from the top. He didn't come down to do something else, and while he was in the area, stop by. These guys only came to talk about LCV, Nissan trucks, and the Armada.
So that kind of to me shows, and he pretty much said, we are dedicated to making this truck market work. And we want to know what you think, what some things you might need and ways to make the market better. So what you say is true. I mean, at the end of the day, Nissan pushes a car and says, here, dealers, sell this. But you'd be a fool not to, come out with cars that dealers aren't excited about selling as well.
What's that called? Kicks?
Sorry, Dave. I'm sure there's a point, too, where if a dealer's saying, listen, you keep putting these cars on our lot, and there's this car and this car, but we have no answer for the guy down the street that's selling the car in between. Make me a car in between so that I can be competitive across the line, or, whatever that is, XYZ car. I don't have a Z car.
They do have a Z car.
If the guy's going down the street and buying a Mustang, he comes by and he says, "Oh, I want a Z," and you're like, "Here's our Z," and he's like, "Oh yeah, well that's kind of like a 30-year-old car," and he's like, "I just went down to look at Mustangs. They're brand new, and they got this and they got that, and all the it's upgraded with this, and it's got all these incentives, and the Z is just kind of just sitting there, and they're selling a cut. You guys sell like whatever it was, like 55 last month or something like that. It's got to be something where a dealer says to the a rep or whatnot that, hey, we have I can't tell this guy to buy a Z because it's hard to sell him because it's so old and it doesn't stand up for this reason or that.
And really what it comes down to a lot of times, this is just my personal opinion, is you got to meet with the right people at Nissan. You got to know the right people, and you got to talk to the right people, because guess what? The guy who's the VP of Nissan North America, you're not necessarily always be able to talk to him. Now, there's certain people I have certain people's numbers a little bit higher up so I can talk to this person, that person, the other. But think about it. If you're just a normal dealer, you talk to your Dom and say, hey, this sucks. I really need this. How long do you think it takes for that message to get up to that guy, or does it ever even get up to him?
Right.
I mean, so in everyone's business, you always have that brown nose or things like that. Yeah, everything's great at this deal. Everything's wonderful. He's not going to tell your problems to the guy who could make those decisions. So sometimes it's a matter of getting that big audience where you can say, hey, man, I need this type of vehicle to help my market.
Be able to compete,
and then that guy goes down and asks his lower guys, and hey, is this true? This is what I'm hearing from a dealer. And you kind of see that right now with the Altima all-wheel drive. That's something that has come from northern dealers, especially, I know, being inside Nissan, saying, hey, we need something all-wheel drive. We need something to compete with this. And I know also out west as well, where Subaru does very well. Dealers are wanting something all-wheel drive as well. So that's one of the first steps I think you're seeing where Nissan might be paying attention maybe a little bit more to the dealers. I mean, only time will tell. But I think the biggest thing is Nissan needs to get back to, they've always been a company that had some niche cars, some cool little niche cars.
Yeah, I agree.
And we've gotten away from that. And I think that's one thing when we were talking to these guys from Tokyo is, man, I get it. If you built something like the Patrol, if you brought the Terra over, you're not necessarily going to crush numbers, but it's the fact it's a little niche car and it drives interest and imagination. And maybe someone doesn't buy the Terra. Maybe someone doesn't buy this, but it gets them to the Nissan brand, and maybe they look at something else. I mean, not every car buyer comes in and says, I want to buy an Altima, and walks out the door with an Altima. Sometimes you might take them on a test drive for a road because you do a consultation with them. You realize maybe they need a little bit more space, but at least that Altima brought them in the door to where you can make that opportunity happen.
Well, I know they better thank the truck line right now, because cars are down about 8% and the truck's actually up 8%.
Yeah.
So they better.
Yeah.
In for a lineup, let's see. I know it's the Pathfinder's starting to be old. The Rogue is starting to be old. Murano still. I know it's some of these are only a few years old, but they're actually in the car world getting old. They better the old trusty Frontier better get that refresh pretty quick, man, if they want to see, because last year at this time they sold 6,973 trucks for the Frontier. This past month it was 8,932. Man, it's just
sales are just constantly going up for the Frontier. It's
I don't
wild.
get
Now, A lot of that is going to be fleet numbers.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I figured
that
it
number.
was. Is they're starting to move a lot of fleet stuff.
Well, what it is with it, this was the end of Nissan's physical year, and there was a lot of chatter that they were going to actually change their fleet tail program, and it was going to go up, and there wasn't going to be as deep incentives for dealers. So I know a lot of dealers really pushed, if you were on the fence about doing any type of fleet deal for trucks, to go ahead and get that done. If you also look at Sentra numbers, at least in our district, Sentra did very well, and that's usually same thing, fleet or rental type companies.
Because Sentra's up, let's see, almost 4,000 cars from this time last year.
Yeah, so, that's blatant numbers, I think.
That's exactly what that is dealers worried, hey, they're going to change the fleet tail program. We need to get all these base level Sentras, base level Frontiers, anything if you were thinking about doing it. And then businesses know that too. Enterprise, all those businesses, they know, hey, there could be a possible crunch. So you definitely saw an increase in those two models.
Right. Yeah,
across the board, it's not looking great for cars, like you were saying, Dave. There's, but I think that is purely a large part of it is purely just due to some really old models. Ultima just popped out, but across the board, there's a lot of old models on the car line.
Which is what it kind of goes back to what we talked about a few podcasts back of they're so slow about getting the next thing out there. And I know with Ultima come out now, Maxima is supposed to pop real quick. Even Sentra is supposed to pop real quick. So
what you're going to see is, I think Nissan's taken a little bit, not a gamble, but they're taking an educated guess. You're going to see the car line refresh very quickly in the next year and a half to 2 years. And part of the reason is there's been some studies that have started happening where they're actually coming out and saying that the crossover SUV will become the next soccer mom van, that actually younger buyers are actually saying, I don't want that. I don't want that crossover. That's what my mom drives. And going back,
counterculture, right?
And going back to sedans, there's a huge article in it that I was just reading in Automotive News about that very topic, where younger buyers are. That's what my mom drives. That's what my grandma drives.
That's what they grew up driving, and that's going to be what older people not cool anymore.
Right. So Nissan with the new Ultima is really anticipating that, and I think that's why you're seeing Ultima, Maxima, and Sentra going to be the next couple big focuses.
Well, I know they even looked at Titan with the new kind of the hipster culture. Was they were actually looking at like, how do you market to those people, because that's like the hipster market's like a weird untapped market if you could figure it out. But I know they were really pushing like, hey, maybe these guys want a big full size truck.
Well, you got to sell them beer instead of trucks. That's the thing. You got to sell them craft beer. That's where I'm going to make my money, bro.
Can you put a craft brewery in the back of that Titan? And
yeah, dude. I need a Titan to deliver my craft brew, dude.
That's what the Titan bed boxes are for. You can keep your craft beer cold while you're driving around.
This is the kind of info you get on this show.
I need to get rid of that Frontier and get a freaking Titan.
Well, and speaking of, Danny, you were kind of giving me crap the other day about I started talking about Armada, and Danny's like, Jesus, man, you're like a carousel of cars all of a sudden.
Well, you know what? Sometimes I think I turn cars fast, but
dude, I'm almost every 2 years I turn a car over.
Jeez, I mean, you have a pretty fresh lineup right now. I don't know. I guess you're getting kind of tired of the Xterra, huh?
No, I'm getting tired of not being able to drive my Titan because my wife.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I'll tell you what, guys, both of you, more recently, I would say I miss my Xterra so bad.
Well, you were saying that the other day, man. Like, you were like, yeah, if I could have an Xterra over this Frontier, I would. And I don't get that at all.
I'd trade it in a heartbeat, dude. If I had a 1-for-1 trade for someone that had a especially if it's that red that my truck is. If they drove that up and said, I want a Frontier real bad, I'd say, give me the keys. Let's do this. Here's $1,000. I'd give them $1,000.
What is it that you miss about the little SUV?
It was a little bit more nimble in the fact that it much better turning radius.
Oh yeah.
I know it sounds stupid, but the turning radius on the Frontier is the most ridiculous. My Armada turns better in a much tighter circle. like a blatantly much tighter circle than my Frontier. I don't get that. I do not get that.
Yeah, because it's the same thing.
Yeah. Secondly, it's the back end. Like anytime I go off road or on trips or whatever, everything gets dirty. Yeah. I could put a cab on it, but then you need a bed slide to get to the front stuff. And there's just I just liked the Xterra better.
I can attest to this. I used to have the King Cab Pro 4X manual, and I loved that little truck. But it took one time when I went on a big trip, had luggage in the back, and went into Hardee's to grab something to eat and came back, and my luggage was all gone. For me to say, I need an SUV, and I ended up getting rid of it and getting the Xterra.
And it's super light in the back end, so if you don't have some stuff back there, it's a little bouncy compared to the Xterra. The Xterra sits a little bit better. It's just, I don't know. I just think the Xterra is the longer I don't have my Xterra, the more I wish I kind of had it. I wish the Frontier was the race truck and the Xterra was my daily.
Man, I miss my Frontier more than anything, man. That's by far been my favorite vehicle to drive.
You're wrong, I think I missed
stupid. I miss my my first car was an 88 two-door Pathfinder.
Oh, nice. Classic, man.
4x4. That was like the perfect camping rig because you could just fold the seats down and you could just have your little setup all back there. I'm like, I wish when I was 16 I would have been more into, I was into off-road as far as going down dirt roads, camping, fishing, this, that, the other, but actually into it where I would have like kept that car and had something now where we could, I was like, dude, that would just be so much fun to have one of those older two-door Pathfinders and really do something crazy with it.
Hey, Nissan, make the Patrol a two-door and bring it.
Two-door Patrol, dream life.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, guys, I know Danny's like over there about to fall asleep, so it's a late night burn on this one.
I gotta pee too.
I seen Danny's over there dancing, man. It's like he's doing the Danny dance. But dude, Holden, welcome into the show, man. The craziness. You've been on several times, but welcome to the family officially.
Yeah. Now I'm kind of stuck. Y'all can't get rid of me, so.
That's right, man. You're like an STD,
You gotta start
buddy.
thinking of all your taglines and intro lines.
That's right, man. It's very important for the show.
You're gonna be stuck with them.
It's very, very.
Make it good.
That's right, man. One day it's just you and Danny going to host this show, and I'm going to be like, I wonder what they said. Let's hear. And I can't have mumbling, man. We got to have precise your own intro.
I think we already saw what that looks like, and I don't know if that's a good idea. It's a lot of mumbling and a lot of "I love you, man."
Yeah, definitely. But welcome into the craziness. And speaking of craziness, we're working up patches, guys. Me and the amigos here, we're going over that. Yes, today? And I think we each have one of our own colors that is going to pop. That'll be on the website real soon. I actually have some hats on the website right now. Only green at the moment, but we're going to add Danny, I was thinking for you, man, a black hat with your classic red stitching, man.
I like it.
And Holden, I don't know about you yet, man, but we'll have a couple options for hats. So you can be like your favorite co-host or host, co-host. I don't know, man. But
I think we're all hosts, Dave.
We are. We are all hosts, man. We are all.
We're the DHD.
The DHD, huh? What is your acronym on that?
Dave, Holden, and Danny.
Was he? I didn't know if it's some military thing of like, Danny's got something. He's gonna pull something cool out.
Dave's holding Danny again.
Dave's holding Danny. Drunk Fest 2018. But so guys, check out our website, check out our Instagram, check out what Holden, you got a couple Instagrams. What are they again?
Yeah, got Blackwatch Customs, and then also I run Nissan_Titan_XD for all your Titan XD trucks out there. I think send me a DM. I post up people's trucks. Always keeping up with what's cool and interesting with the XD guys. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I think you have more Instagram pages than I do. Danny, how can they find you? Where are you at in the world?
me. Instagram, DaGrootX, DaGrootX. And if you want to follow along a little bit on the brewery that I'm working on, it's Westfallen Brewcraft, spelled with Westfallen with one L. Check that out. Yeah, and you can kind of see how that's going. Keep an eye on my brew that's going to be popping up pretty soon.
The Groot Brew.
Grutenbrau.
But we are Nissan Podcast or Nissan Nation Podcast on Instagram, Nissan Nation on Facebook, and about anywhere. And go ahead, Dane.
Oh, I think I had one more announcement. Is we named the race team, the racetrack. I don't think I announced that last time.
You didn't.
It's Grunt Force Racing, and that's the name. The name comes from one of my best friends. That's going to be my co-driver. Is Marine, ex-Marine. They don't like being called ex-Marine, but he's a Marine, so that's the Grunt. And then I'm in the Air Forces, so we got Grunt Force Racing. So hop on the Facebooks and check that out. So keep up to date on all the pictures and cool stuff for the racetrack.
We'll definitely do that. That was a shocker when you came up with that name. I was like, okay, I know where Danny's probably going with it. No, what? Grunt Force? I don't know on that one, man. But check out our website, nissanpodcast.com or nissannationpodcast.com. We've got our Amazon link on there if you want to help support the show. We have a donation button on there if you want to help support the show. And that's about it, guys. From everybody here, Kelly in the new intro, we got to add the old Holden on there, to JR who does our music, to the El Presidente who does some of the buffer music and stuff. Man, we grateful to be back and solid and a three-peater now, I guess. So from everybody here at the Nissan Nation Podcast, my name is David Boyd, and what are we, Danny?
Three-peaters!
Love y'all.